That's Jimmy Stein. I'm Clint Lamb, and this is the Cover Crimson YouTube channel. Jimmy, we talked about Alabama's offense against South Carolina's defense. Wasn't a great performance by any means, but there were some good moments, and there were some takeaways where you can say, okay, they've got to get some things fixed. But when the team really needed them, I thought this defense stepped up and I thought the offense stepped up. But really, the defense in particular, they were good all throughout the game. Now, granted, Lenore Sellers is going to be Lenore Sellers. He's going to break tackles. I find it hilarious how all week we're like, this guy breaks tackles. This guy is a phenomenal runner. Kane Womack's getting up there and saying, we got to rally to the football. We got to get multiple bodies on this guy because he makes the first guy, it's really tough for the first guy to bring him down. And then when fans see exactly that playing out on Saturday, they're like, what's going on? Why can't we tackle him? Because he's a really good football player. And that just happens. It's always, entertaining for me to see that. It's frustrating as you're watching it. Do not get me wrong. I'm right there with people, but that's kind of is it unexpected? No, it's not unexpected at all. But outside of Lenore Sellers on the ground, and you had one vertical shot that they were able to connect on, I actually think that Alabama's defense played extremely well in this football game, stopping South Carolina's run game, applying some pressure on Lenore Sellers, really didn't get home a whole lot, but also making his life extremely difficult and getting a couple of very key, very timely turnovers that both of them made critical or had a critical impact on the outcome of the game. I was actually impressed with Alabama's defensive performance on Saturday.
Yeah, I think when you throw this in, there were frustrating moments, and I couldn't agree with you more about how a lot of the frustration was so easy to see. This was coming the whole time. It's hard to get Sellers to the ground. It's hard for everybody. Alabama did not have an off game. If you played South Carolina again next Saturday, as far as Lenore scrambling around, it's going to look exactly like that again. And if you played him a third time, it'll look exactly like that again. He's just very difficult to sack, get to the ground, because not only does he have extreme athleticism, he's big and strong. I mean, how many times did we have a hand on him or even two hands on him? Still didn't get him down, and he made a positive play. That's just Lenore Sellers, and that's why you often see him projected as even a first-round pick, because in addition to that, he's a better quarterback than any of us realize, because he gets virtually no help from his offensive line or from his skill players. He gets very little help. He does it all on his own. But the best thing I can say about the defense, Clint, and you brought this up, and when they did have their breakdowns or failures, and there were some, it wasn't perfect. They did give up around 330 yards total, I think, which is good in an SEC football game. That's good. Might be a little more than you'd like to see against one of the least effective offenses in the SEC. But where they did have some breakdowns and give up stuff, the defense made the two plays that won the game. I mean, they won the game on defense because of Deshaun Jones, who didn't necessarily make a spectacular play, but you know what happened? He took the play they gave to him. And sometimes that doesn't happen. Xavier Brown dropped an interception late in the game. It doesn't always happen that you make the play that's sort of handed to you, but he did. He did. The running back bobbles the ball. It goes up in the air. It goes right to number 7. But not only did he fully secure the ball, gathered himself, got in the end zone. Huge play in the game. Huge play in the game. I mean, it's 29-22. There's 7 points of it right there. Secondly, obviously, the strip sack by the two captains. I mean, it was really Deontay Lawson and Tim Keenan sort of working together. Kind of a hilarious play where Deontay strips the ball out. He's got to tell Tim Keenan, hey, you're sitting on the ball. You need to grasp it because you're sitting on it. But the fact that it was the two senior captains, the two leaders that refused to lose and made a play that few will make. I mean, Sellers doesn't really do that. This is a big, strong dude to just rip the football out of his arms like Deontay Lawson did. Just so fitting and so great that it was Lawson and Keenan who did it. That was the play that won the game for Alabama. Alabama wins. If you don't make that play, you're probably in overtime. And who knows what happens on the road in overtime. I mean, it was that close. But Lawson and Keenan made the play that won the game. That's what I want to brag about the defense on, Clint. In a game where I don't think they played their best. I'm not going to call the 60-minute effort awesome. It was good. It was fine. but an exclamation point behind the fact that they really made the two biggest plays in the game that won the game for Alabama were made by the defense on those two turnovers that they created. And by the way, that strip thing, that's a Kane Womack creation. They work on that a lot. He wants this defense to force turnovers. They work on that strip all the time at practice. And shout out to Kane Womack for, hey, that came through at exactly the right moment.
First of all, the timing of the turnovers, they've had critical turnover after critical turnover in the last several games. I mean, you talk about Diego Pavia and what he was doing, had a chance to go up early in that game by multiple scores. Justin Jefferson forces a fumble in Alabama's territory where it looked like Vanderbilt was about to score. And now Alabama goes down the field, scores a touchdown, ties it up. Completely different ball game. You talk about Missouri and some of the turnovers they were able to force. You talk about Tennessee with the pick six and the timeliness and the way that turned that game completely upside down. And then you talk about what they did on Saturday with both of those turnovers, the pick six really getting things going, creating a big time play, a back-to-back games with an interception for a touchdown, a non-offensive touchdown. That's always going to help, especially when your offense is really struggling like Alabama did at times against South Carolina. And then when you talk about what they did right there at the end, when you had to have a tie ball game, you're trying to keep Lenore Sellers and South Carolina from driving down the field and kicking a field goal. Even though I was thinking to myself, I'm not overly confident that this South Carolina kicker will make it. Should he get the opportunity, you still don't need to even give him the opportunity. Not only that, but Alabama created a turnover, which gave them the chance to either, have a field goal attempt or score a touchdown. And then they end up scoring a touchdown, mostly because South Carolina let them on that play. And I know that might upset some Alabama fans, but it did seem pretty clear that they intentionally let Jeremy Bernard go. That I don't agree with that whatsoever. If you had just been simply paying attention to Alabama's season, Connor Talty, there's some inconsistencies there. It's a hostile environment. It's a ton of pressure. You talk about the fact that Shane Beamer is kind of known as a special teams guy. And so it's like, hey, considering their struggles with their, can you do something to affect the kick or whatever? Maybe not block it necessarily, but with you being kind of a special teams coordinator that jumps to head coach, you'd think they'd feel confident in their field goal, their special teams. And you didn't see that confidence. And I thought that was interesting. But, they've been creating turnovers on defense. And that is exactly, you got an offense that if they can ever get things figured out, there's so much potential in the world. And one thing that I will say is that this game was won differently. They had to win differently. They not only did they not, like against Tennessee, it was pretty evenly split as far as the time of possession. I want to see it was like within 3 or 4 minutes. But in a lot of those other games, and Alabama did have the advantage in that Tennessee game as far as time of possession. It just wasn't as lopsided as it has been in some of the other games. And so Alabama was able to control the game for a majority of the game in all of those. In this one, they didn't lead the time of possession, and it took some late, long, sustaining drives for them to make it a lot more respectable as far as the time of possession. A majority of it, South Carolina controlled the game. And so Alabama had to figure out a way to get things back on track, despite the fact that one of the ways they had been winning for a majority of the season, they weren't able to win that way. I thought that was pretty key. So when it comes to how Alabama won and how they had to win, you had to have players step up and make plays. Offensively, they did that at the end of the game. They figured it out. Defensively, though, you definitely had guys stepping up at some pretty critical, pretty important moments.
A guy I want to talk about that no one's really mentioned and is responsible for one of the sacks, Keon Keeley. He made the final sack of the game. People for last couple of seasons, where's Keon? Where's Keon? Well, he's developing. He's not playing. Some fans bring him up every day to the point that when's Keon getting in the portal? And we heard about disappointment about not seeing Keon Keeley for 2 years. Now, not only are you seeing Keon Keeley, he's helping Alabama win the games. This isn't garbage time. This is the game is on the line. Keon's in there, and not only is he in there, he's sacking Lenora Sellers to end the game, helping Alabama win, which is all you can ask of these players. When you recruit them and sign them, what are you doing that for? To improve your football team so you have a chance to win the games. Here's Keon actually now not only finally playing critical snaps, but making the plays to help Alabama win the football game. I couldn't be happier for him. I think that play needs more attention. I think some people, it gets overshadowed by other things the defense did or the offense did in the game. But at the same time, this is Keon Keeley not only playing in critical moments, it's Keon helping Alabama win the games. I'll go this far. I'm not sure I wouldn't rank Keon right now in terms of rushing the passer. I'm not sure there's anybody on the team any better other than Yanze Pierre. I put Yanze Pierre. He's Alabama's best pass rusher right now. I'm not so sure Keeley's not the second best. I know some people say, well, what about LT Overton? Well, I'm going to point to look at all the snaps played in 2025 and the lack of sacks by LT Overton, the lack of pressures, and he's playing a ton of snaps. And I'm not, I do think LT's got to play a little better. I think he's a key player for Alabama in November. Is LT Overton's got to step it up, I think, for Alabama. I'm not so sure that Keon Keeley isn't the second best pass rusher on this team right now.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, especially with Quay Russaw not being healthy. When you actually look at the numbers, in 40 pass rushing opportunities, Keon Keeley has 7 pressures. If you gave Keon Keeley the same number of pass rushing opportunities as Yanze Pierre, 146, Pierre's had 29 pressures. Keeley would have 26. So he wouldn't be too far behind. He'd be right there on the same pace. I would venture to guess that was probably the second best rate behind Yanze Pierre on the team. So that kind of supports what you're saying. With the way that this game played out, it was 76 plays for Alabama's defense in a non-overtime game. When you start talking about these clock rules and the way that that's supposed to limit the number of possessions and snaps in the game, or it has been, 76 plays is a lot. So Alabama was out there for a while, and it did feel like at times this has been the most impressive part about the performance, in my opinion, because they seemed gassed pretty late in the game, or were starting to get gassed. And yet when they needed to have critical stops and get critical turnovers, they were able to do that. Now, I think that what we're not talking about enough is that all of the rotation and the depth that they had built in a lot of these other games really started to play a part in this one, because they played 10 defensive linemen when you talk about the Bandits and the interior guys. That's a lot of players rotating in. And granted, I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that it was 76 plays. It was a lot. Guys were starting to get a little wore down. Hey, let's put somebody out there who we trust, can get the job done. Maybe might not be as effective as the starter, but we can give this starter a little bit of a break and allow that when really, this is a close game, it's a battle. When it gets into the critical situations late, we can turn back to some of our starters and they can be a little bit more fresh. You talk about the off-ball linebackers, you end up playing 3 of those guys. The fact that you have the rotation, as far as being wore down or anything, that shouldn't be too much of a problem when you've got a guy who can rotate in pretty consistently. But then, at DB, I mean, you had 9 different players play. Dijon Lee played the most snaps amongst the defensive backs with 70, amongst the corners with 70. Zabian Brown had 61. Damani Jackson had 29. What did you think about how that whole deal played out?
Pretty surprising that Dijon has gone to completely supplanting Damani Jackson as a starting corner this summer. I would have lost a lot of money on that bet. I mean, if you said in June or July, hey, as good as Dijon was this spring, I think he takes Damani's job. I would have bet a lot of money against that, but it dang sure happened. Now, Damani did play 20, 30 snaps. So I think he plays a lot when Alabama's in their dime package. I think sometimes you see Damani, Zabian, and Dijon all out there at the same time. That does happen on some snaps. But Dijon just becoming Alabama's, I want to almost say, most consistent corner. I mean, I think Zabian still's the bigger playmaker, but Dijon just doesn't give up much. I think he was only targeted twice in the whole game, despite playing virtually every snap. So he's been remarkable. I mean, the kind of career Dijon's going to have is just amazing. He's not only shockingly good for a freshman, I would go so far as to say now he's a good SEC defensive back. We're only 8 or 9 games into his whole career, and we can already say he's a good SEC defensive back. Very consistent. The size is incredible. Now Alabama's got a consistent corner on one side and a playmaker on the other in Zabian. Not sure Zabian had his best game because there was 2 highlight. He had an interception he probably should have caught, and then he gave up, the bomb to Nick Harbor. That was a little disappointing. But it happens when you play cornerback at this level. Everybody gets beat. You shake it off. You go to the next play. But pretty crazy to me that Damani, who was so good in 2024, I thought Damani Jackson was one of the best players on the defense a year ago, but he just hasn't had it this year for whatever reason. And then Dijon shows up at the same time. Pretty remarkable that he's ended up being a full-time starting cornerback on this team at his age with who he had to beat out to do it.
Yeah, that is really impressive. I thought Jan Zapier had a phenomenal game. I thought James Smith, he flashed. He needs to be more consistent. It's been a problem for him, but he played a lot of snaps, and he 50% of the snaps, and he flashed on multiple occasions. And he's just, I think in due time, he's going to be an absolute superstar, despite the fact that from a consistency standpoint, it's taken him a little bit longer than I was anticipating. Tim Keenan was an absolute ox on the interior. Having him in there was absolutely huge. I thought all three of the off-ball linebackers, this was the best performance collectively from that trio that Alabama has gotten all season. Justin Jefferson was all over the place once again. He is playing phenomenal football. I think Deontay Lawson had his best game this season by far. I mean, he was a lot of tackles, was able to apply pressure, was able to force that fumble in a key moment. Considering I still don't think he's 100%, very impressive performance. Nakai Hill-Green continues to get better each and every week. It is becoming increasingly obvious that he is getting more comfortable, and as he gets more comfortable, his impact is becoming greater. He is a good football player. So what Alabama was hoping to have at off-ball linebacker, I think they've gotten in the last few weeks, and I think that will only continue to get better as the season progresses. Agree that the secondary as a whole, I would actually say that it was a really good performance from the secondary, other than, you don't want to give up the vertical shot, but sometimes good players make good plays. And that's what Nick Harbor is, a really good player, especially on that kind of stuff. Doesn't really play the position with a lot of nuance, but he's a height, weight, speed guy, and he just beat Zabian down the field and it was a good throw from Lenore Sellers, and they scored a long touchdown. But other than that, I think overall they played pretty well on the back end. Would like to see a little bit more consistent pressure up front, but I think as far as stopping the run, especially from South Carolina's running backs, I thought they did a good job. I thought as they started getting into the depth a little bit, the depth played pretty well. Kelby Collins, I thought, played okay. Didn't see a whole lot from Henry in his 3 snaps, so not a lot that you can take away from it. But what it is showing us is that he's becoming another trusted member of that rotation. It's now multiple weeks. We can start to say, okay, he's earning every week opportunities. Not a lot right now, but that was certainly encouraging to see. As far as the Keon Keeley sack, one thing I'll say, Jimmy, it feels like that Kane Womack late in games, he wanted them to be able to apply pressure more, that he wanted them to be able to get to the quarterback or affect the quarterback more. Keon Keeley has had those in-game opportunities when they've been in those obvious passing situations. He's affected the quarterback at times, but being able to get that sack, I thought, was pretty critical for him, because it was Kane Womack saying, hey, we need more in these situations, and Keon Keeley was one of the guys that stepped up and gave them more. I thought that was pretty important. Do you have anything else before we hop out of here, brother?
Just to say, Justin Jefferson's playing so well. He's now landing. For those that are unaware, it shouldn't be too surprised. Justin Jefferson now landing on NFL radar. I mean, he'll be a little undersized. That's going to be a knock against him. And quite frankly, it's probably going to keep him on day 3. I think the size. But if you'd have told him 2 years ago that you're going to play in the National Football League, you might be a little surprised. But I think Justin Jefferson is playing his way into day 3 of the draft, despite his size. He's playing phenomenal football. Like you said, I think Deontay Lawson getting healthier now every week. And boy, you'll have to play well against LSU. Looking forward to our LSU previews. It deserves extra shows because there is a lot to talk about when it comes to LSU football.
Yeah, it really is. I'm looking forward to that as well. But we'll be continuing to, I already told people we'll be looking back a little bit, looking at season-long stuff, snap developments, and how things are changing, like Keon Keeley's role. What does that look like? What it might look like moving forward? Guys who might have more opportunities post-bye week. Keon Keeley is certainly near the top of that list. So appreciate everybody for tuning in. Get on over to roback.com. Use the promo code Crimson20 to get 20% off your order. Got mine on right now. Absolutely love it. Wore it down at the beach this weekend, and it was perfect. Love everything that I got Roback. Jimmy, appreciate you, brother, so much for hopping on here with me. Appreciate everybody who has tuned in, and we will talk to you guys on Wednesday. Appreciate y'all.